The summoning of the beast. The Zorvith Dominion had conquered countless worlds. Their warriors were among the most feared in the galaxy. Their war beasts capable of reducing civilizations to ash. When they set their sights on a new species, they demanded proof of strength. The latest target? Humanity. Supreme General Zathar, a towering reptilian warrior with obsidian scales and piercing yellow eyes, stood before the holographic transmission from Earth. His officers surrounded him, their armor adorned with the battle scars of 1,000 campaigns. "This world claims sentience," Zathar growled. "But words are meaningless. Power is what matters." He stepped forward, towering over the humans on the screen. "If you wish to be recognized as equals, you must prove yourselves. Summon your mightiest war beast, the fiercest creature your world has to offer. If it impresses us, we will consider a truce. If not," he bared his fangs, "your species will kneel before us." The humans, diplomats, generals, and scientists murmured among themselves. The transmission cut out. The Zorvith waited. They were accustomed to displays of monstrous power. On past worlds, they had seen massive bioengineered war creatures, towering battle mechs, and genetically enhanced monstrosities bred solely for destruction. What would the humans send? Some kind of armored superpredator? A colossal war machine? Zathar smiled. Whatever it was, it would be an honor to crush it. Hours later, the arrival. The Zorvith flagship, the Doomfang, hovered in high orbit over Earth. A single human transport shuttle approached their docking bay. The Zorvith prepared for battle, lining the halls with elite warriors, their claws sharp, their energy weapons primed. The doors hissed open. A small shape bounded out. It was furry. The Zorvith stared. The thing had floppy ears, golden fur, and a wagging tail. Its pink tongue lolled out as it bounced toward them on stubby legs, utterly unafraid. Supreme General Zathar blinked. He turned to his second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Ralvox. "Where's the beast?" Ralvox frowned. He checked his battle scanner. I think this is the beast." The Zorvith exchanged uneasy glances. Something about this creature felt wrong. It was small, but exuded an unnerving confidence. It trotted forward and sat down before them, tilting its head. Zathar scowled. "This is a trick. The real beast will emerge soon." A human figure stepped out of the shuttle, Captain Sarah Hayes. She was tall, confident, and entirely at ease, as if oblivious to the dozens of weapons aimed at her. She clapped her hands. "Good boy, Tank." The golden-furred creature barked happily, wagging its tail. Zathar's jaw clenched. "What is this?" Hayes beamed. "This is Tank, Earth's finest war beast. Trained from birth. Unstoppable in battle. You asked for our mightiest creature, and we delivered." Silence. Ralvox's eyes narrowed. "It is small." "Ah," Hayes said, nodding. "Deceptively so, but don't let his size fool you. He's the most dangerous being we've ever unleashed in combat." Zathar stared at the small creature, who was now enthusiastically sniffing his armored boots. "Enough," he growled. "You mock us." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Do we?" Zathar exhaled sharply. He had no patience for human riddles. He turned to his officers. "Summon the Krogeran Hellspawn. If this is truly their greatest war beast, it will prove itself in combat." The challenge. The arena was set. The Zorvith gathered in a massive chamber aboard the Doomfang, an enclosed battleground where war beasts clashed for dominance. On one side, Tank sat on his haunches, panting happily. On the other, the Krogeran Hellspawn emerged. The beast was a towering, armored monster, its carapace lined with jagged spikes, its four muscular limbs tipped with claws that could rip through titanium. It let out a bone-rattling shriek, its multiple red eyes locking onto the small, golden creature before it. Tank wagged his tail. The Zorvith warriors roared their approval, slamming their fists against their chests. They had seen the Hellspawn devour creatures 10 times its size. This would be no contest. Zathar raised his claw. "Begin." The Hellspawn lunged, and Tank bounced forward, his tail a blur of excitement. Instead of attacking, he sniffed the Hellspawn's leg, let out a delighted bark, and licked its face. The hellspawn froze. A shudder ran through its massive form. Its claws lowered slightly. Its red eyes flickered. Then, in an act that stunned every Zorvith in the room, the hellspawn slowly lowered itself to the ground, curling its massive limbs inward. The beast had never surrendered, never yielded, but now, before their eyes, it had laid down in submission. The Zorvith warlords gawked in horrified silence. Zather's mouth fell open. What is happening? Hayes grinned. Looks like Tank just made a friend. The hellspawn let out a deep, rumbling purr, nudging Tank with its massive snout. Tank yipped and rolled on his back, his fluffy belly exposed in utter trust. The monstrous hellspawn, feared across the galaxy, gently nudged him again, then lay its head down beside him. A nervous murmur rippled through the Zorvith ranks. Ralvox's voice was shaky. General, our most fearsome war beast has been neutralized in mere seconds. Without a single strike. Zather's hands clenched into fists. This was impossible. No force in the galaxy had ever defeated the hellspawn. And yet, this small Earth creature had done so without lifting a claw. His yellow eyes darkened. Something is wrong here, he whispered. Hayes folded her arms. Oh, I wouldn't say that. I'd say you're looking at the most powerful weapon humanity has ever created. Zather stared down at the golden-furred creature, now dozing peacefully atop the monstrous hellspawn. For the first time in his life, the Supreme General of the Zorvith felt fear. The beast unleashed. The aftermath of defeat. Supreme General Zather stood rigid, his claws twitching at his sides. Around him, the Zorvith warlords remained frozen, staring at the impossible scene before them. The Krogeran hellspawn, a creature that had slaughtered armies, now lay curled up beside the small Earth creature known as Tank. The monster's colossal form had gone limp, its armor-plated head resting beside the golden-furred beast, breathing slow and steady. And the worst part? Tank was snoring. A deep, contented, belly-up, paws in the air kind of snore. Zather felt his rage boiling beneath his scales. This was not how battle was supposed to go. A warrior beast did not roll over in submission like a newborn hatchling. A low, uneasy growl rumbled from his second-in-command, Ralvox. General, what do we do? Zather clenched his fists. We escalate. His voice carried across the chamber. Bring forth the Scourge Hounds. A ripple of shock passed through the Zorvith warriors. Even Ralvox hesitated. Sir, the Scourge Hounds have never. I said bring them. Zather roared. The order was obeyed. The second test. The chamber's heavy blast doors hissed open, revealing the Scourge Hounds, a trio of sinewy, black-scaled creatures. Their elongated jaws dripped with acidic venom, their 6 legs moving in unnatural, jerking motions. Unlike the hellspawn, which was a trained war beast, the Scourge Hounds were pure, mindless killers, bred for nothing but slaughter. They did not submit. They did not hesitate. They only hunted. Tank, having been rudely awakened from his nap, let out a happy bark. He wagged his tail. The Scourge Hound snarled and pounced. The Zorvith cheered, believing the battle had finally begun. But then, Tank sprinted forward. The Scourge Hounds braced for impact. And then, at the last possible second, Tank dropped into a perfect play bow, his front paws outstretched, his tail wagging high, his eyes wide with excitement. The Scourge Hounds stopped midair. For the first time in their existence, their genetically programmed aggression glitched. Tank leaped up and licked one directly on the snout. The entire chamber fell silent. The Scourge Hounds, standing on the razor's edge of instinct and confusion, hesitated, then sniffed at the golden creature before them. One let out a confused whimper. Another backed up slightly, uncertain. And then, the impossible happened again. The Scourge Hound sat down. No, not just sat down. They wagged their tails. One of them even rolled onto its back, exposing its vulnerable underbelly, something no Scourge Hound had ever done before. The Zorvith warlords gasped in horror. Ralvox took an uneasy step forward. General, this isn't just battle disarmament. This is psychological warfare. Zather's eyes burned. No, this is unnatural. Tank, meanwhile, pranced in circles, barking happily as the terrifying alien creatures playfully nuzzled him. Hayes smirked. Told you. He's unstoppable. Cracks in the Empire. The Zorvith ranks began to murmur amongst themselves. For generations, their empire had ruled through terror. Their war beasts crushed opposition. Their soldiers feared nothing. But now, in mere minutes, a tiny earth creature had dismantled their most fearsome weapons, without a single drop of bloodshed. And worse, some of the Zorvith were starting to look at Tank with curiosity. Ralvox, always the most hardened among them, exhaled slowly. General, some of the warriors, they are whispering. They are asking questions. Zather whirled on him. What questions? Ralvox hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he spoke. They ask if perhaps we have been fighting the wrong way. Zather's claws screeched against the metal floor. No, this cannot happen. The Zorvith had ruled for centuries through domination, through strength. And now, this thing, this wretched earth creature, was infecting his warriors with weakness. He had to stop it. The ultimate order. Zather straightened, his voice cold. Enough of these tests. He stepped forward, towering over Hayes, his yellow eyes locked on hers. You are manipulating my soldiers. I will not allow it. Hayes crossed her arms. Manipulating? I'd say we're just showing them a different way. Lies. Zather snarled. This creature is a weapon of subversion, a biological warfare device meant to weaken our empire from within. Hayes rolled her eyes. Dude, it's a puppy. Zather ignored her. He turned to Ralvox. Take the beast. Contain it. If necessary, destroy it. The word sent a ripple of unease through the Zorvith ranks. Ralvox hesitated. Hayes narrowed her eyes. You don't want to do that. I will do whatever is necessary to protect my empire, Zather growled. But then, a small whimper. Tank, oblivious to the tension, padded up to Zather and gently nudged his armored shin with his nose. Zather froze. The little creature looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. A small, innocent huff of breath, a tail wag, and something in Zather's chest twisted. The Supreme General of the Zorvith Dominion had crushed rebellions, slaughtered kings, and burned entire civilizations to the ground. But he had never faced this. The warmth, the strange, pure trust radiating from this tiny creature. For the first time in his life, he hesitated, and the Zorvith warriors saw it. A murmur swept through the ranks, a crack in their leader's iron rule. Ralvox's voice was quiet. General, I think we need to reconsider. Zather clenched his jaw, but he said nothing, because deep down, in some dark, hidden corner of his heart, he knew. The crack in the armor, the seeds of doubt, the tension in the chamber was thick. The Zorvith warriors, once unwavering in their loyalty, now shifted uneasily as they watched their supreme general stand motionless. At his feet, Tank sat patiently, his golden fur catching the artificial lights of the warship. His pink tongue lolled out slightly as he gazed up at Zather with pure, unshakable trust. It was a simple look, but it carried the weight of something greater. Ralvox, the battle-scarred second-in-command, took a cautious step forward. His voice was softer than usual. General, I have fought by your side for decades. I have seen you crush enemies without hesitation. Zather's hands curled into fists. And this is the first time I've ever seen you hesitate. A ripple passed through the gathered warriors. The unthinkable had happened. Their leader had paused. Zather's eyes burned. His voice dropped into a dangerous growl. I do not hesitate. I am Supreme General of the Zorvith Dominion. We do not waver. Ralvox met his gaze evenly. Then why haven't you given the order? Silence. The gathered warriors held their breath. Zather's order to destroy the beast still hung in the air, unexecuted. And every second that passed without action undermined his authority. Tank yawned, completely oblivious to the political turmoil he had caused. He stretched his front paws forward, tail wagging, before padding over to Ralvox and sniffing his armored leg. The fearsome warlord, second only to Zather himself, flinched. But then, slowly his hand dropped to his side. Tank let out a small, contented huff and gently licked the exposed section of Ralvox's gauntlet. Ralvox let out a breath. General, I do not think I can kill this creature. Murmurs. More cracks in the foundation. Zathar's vision darkened. His claws twitched. He needed to end this now before this ridiculous infection spread any further. His hand shot to the energy blade at his hip, a challenge of leadership. I will do it myself, Zathar snarled. The murmurs ceased. All eyes turned toward the Supreme General. Hayes stiffened but did not move. You don't want to do that. I will not allow a mere earth creature to dismantle my empire, Zathar growled. He stepped forward, towering over Tank. The small dog tilted his head. Zathar raised his blade. And then, Tank wagged his tail. Not out of fear, not out of defense, out of excitement. He barked happily and jumped up, placing his front paws against Zathar's leg. The Supreme General of the Zorvith Dominion, Slayer of Worlds, staggered backward. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Zathar barely caught himself, his tail lashing wildly. His chest heaved as he stared at the creature, this impossible thing that had just done what no warrior, no weapon, no army had ever done. It had made him retreat. For a Zorvith leader, there was only one thing that meant. Weakness. His grip tightened on his blade, but his hands shook. Ralvox took another step forward. His voice was quiet but firm. General, I challenge you. The room froze. Zathar's breath hitched. A challenge. A direct challenge to his rule. The breaking point. Zathar turned slowly, facing his most trusted warrior. You dare? I do, Ralvox said. His shoulders squared. Not to a duel of blades, but of leadership. Murmurs swept through the gathered warriors. This was unprecedented. Zorvith leadership was always won through combat. But this was a battle of ideas. Ralvox gestured toward the Krogeran Hellspawn, still resting beside Tank. Toward the Scourge Hounds, now utterly docile. And finally, toward Tank himself. This earth creature, Ralvox said, his voice growing stronger, has done something we have never seen before. It has turned our greatest weapons into allies. It has conquered without killing. It has done what we, with all our strength, could never achieve. He turned back to Zathar, eyes sharp. Perhaps this is the path forward. Zathar wanted to deny it, wanted to shut down this madness before it spread any further. But as he looked around the chamber, he saw too many warriors nodding, too many whispers of agreement, too much doubt. For the first time in his reign, Zathar felt control slipping from his grasp. The decision. The Supreme General's breathing was ragged. His grip on his weapon was white-knuckled. He could still fight this, crush the dissent, wipe out this disease of weakness. But then, Tank trotted up to him again, and did something no warrior, no leader, no being in the galaxy had ever dared do. He nuzzled Zathar's leg. Zathar's claws trembled. In that moment, he realized the truth. He had already lost, not in battle, not by force, but by something far more dangerous, something that had never, in all his years of war, been accounted for. Kindness. The weight of it crushed down on him, heavier than any battlefield loss. And Zathar, Supreme General of the Zorvith Dominion, did the only thing he could. He let the energy blade drop from his grip. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the chamber. And with it, the reign of terror that had lasted for centuries began to crumble. The dawn of a new era. The blade falls. The sound of Zathar's energy blade clattering to the floor echoed through the chamber like a death knell. It wasn't just the fall of a weapon. It was the fall of an entire way of life. The Zorvith warriors stood frozen, their gazes locked on their Supreme General. He had surrendered, not to a warrior, not to an army, but to a tiny earth creature with floppy ears and an unshakable heart. Tank, oblivious to the galactic shift he had caused, wagged his tail and licked Zathar's leg. A sharp breath escaped the warlord's lips. He had faced death countless times, but never had he encountered something so terrifyingly disarming. Hayes broke the silence first, arms crossed, smirking. So, do we call this a surrender, or are you just really into dogs? Zathar flinched, not from anger, but from the sheer weight of realization crushing down on him. This wasn't just about one battle. It was about everything. The Zorvith had built their empire on conquest. They had never entertained the idea of peace through anything but dominance. And yet, here it was staring them in the face. Or rather, panting happily at their feet. The warrior's choice. Ralvox stepped forward, his voice cautious but firm. "General, the soldiers are watching." Zathar's jaw clenched. He knew what Ralvox was saying. A leader who wavers is a leader unfit to rule. If he continued down this path, if he acknowledged what had happened here, his authority would never recover. But if he ignored it, if he tried to erase what had just unfolded, would he even have an empire left to rule? He took a slow breath. His claws twitched. His mind screamed at him to seize control, to reassert dominance. But deep inside, something whispered an uncomfortable truth. What if we've been doing this all wrong? He looked at Tank. The creature had no weapons, no armor, no tactical genius. It had defeated the Zorvatha's most fearsome war beasts, not through force, but through something far more dangerous. Connection. The Hellspawn, the Scourge Hounds, even his own warriors were no longer looking at Zathar for guidance. They were looking at Tank. And for the first time in his existence, Zathar had no answer. His claws curled in, then released. He exhaled slowly. Then, before the stunned eyes of his warriors, he knelt. Not to the humans, not to Earth, but to the possibility that they had been wrong. Gasps filled the room. Ralvox stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "General," Zathar's voice was low, steady, and unlike anything they had ever heard from him before. "Perhaps it is time we learned a different way." The words shook the foundation of the Zorvath Dominion. A new order. The chamber was silent. No one dare move. Then, one warrior lowered his weapon. Then another, and another. Within moments, the Zorvath warlords who had once sworn undying loyalty to their empire's rule of conquest now stood in quiet contemplation. Ralvox gave a slow nod. His voice was careful, but tinged with something that had never existed in their ranks before. "Hope. If we are to learn, General, then who better to teach us than this creature?" All eyes turned to Tank. Tank, thrilled by all the attention, promptly rolled onto his back, paws in the air, tongue lolling out. Hayes chuckled. "Well, General, congratulations. You've just been conquered by the power of belly rubs." Zathar sighed through his nose. He felt the weight of centuries pressing against him, demanding he hold firm to the old ways. But looking at the creature before him, so innocent yet so powerful in its own way, he realized something that shook him to his core. The Zorvath had spent centuries breaking enemies through fear. But fear never lasted. What this tiny earth beast had done would last forever. Zathar exhaled, then let the lesson begin. A single command, a single shift in history. And with it, the most feared warriors in the galaxy took their first step into an unknown future. The aftermath. It didn't happen overnight. Zathar still held control over his forces, but the whispers of change spread across the fleet. Some warlords resisted, clinging to the old ways, but others began to listen. The Hellspawn, once a beast of destruction, became an ambassador of peace, standing beside the very creature that had once defeated it. The Scourge Hounds, once weapons of terror, became protectors of something far greater. And the Zorvath warriors? Many of them, despite their hardened exteriors, found themselves drawn to the Earth creature's strange, disarming power. For the first time in Zorvath history, true peace was no longer a distant concept. It was here, it was real, and it had floppy ears and an endless supply of unconditional love. A final meeting. As the first signs of peace treaties were drawn up between Earth and the Zorvath Dominion, Hayes found herself standing beside Zathar, looking out at the stars. "So," she said casually, "still think Tank is a biological weapon?" Zathar, arms crossed, let out a deep, tired sigh. "In a way, yes." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Zathar turned his gaze toward the small golden creature, currently playing with a group of Zorvath soldiers, all of whom had abandoned their weapons in favor of belly rubs. He shook his head. "I have fought battles across the galaxy. I have seen planets burn. But I have never seen a force capable of undoing centuries of war with a mere wag of the tail." Hayes grinned. "Yeah, that's dogs for you." Zather exhaled. We were prepared to fight humanity's greatest weapon. We did not expect it to be this. Hayes laughed. That's the thing about war, Zather. Sometimes, the strongest weapons aren't the ones that kill. The Supreme General of the Zorvith Dominion stood in silence. And, deep inside, he knew she was right. As the stars stretched out before them, the greatest empire of war began its slow transformation, not through fire and blood, but through something far more powerful. A single, small, golden-furred creature. And with that, peace had truly begun.